Breakcore is a genre that many consider to be very underground and niche. There are many people that produce songs purely in that genre, and those that are active are generally considered to be mediocre at best, with many criticizing the genre as a whole as being just noise. However, there are a few artists that many consider to have gone above and beyond to produce masterpieces. To name just a few, we have the Phoenician Snares, who many consider as the biggest influence on the genre as a whole, and is someone I hope to make a video on later. We have the Flashbulb, who is a prominent figure in IDM and is also known for his heavier breakcore stuff. And we have an artist who's considered a great hit or miss, goreshit. Many people criticize goreshit because of the insane amount of lollycore it's produced, and otherwise what's in all honesty pretty weird tracks. But there are a couple of his albums that have managed to catch many people's attention, and show that goreshit is one of the few genuine talents in this field, the biggest of which being the Semantic series, which consists of 2 albums, Semantics, The Benzo Chronicles, which released on February 10, 2015, and contains some fan favourites from him such as Burn This Moment Into the Retina of My Eye and There Are No Angels Here, and what was his first ever album released, The Semantic Compositions on Death and Its Meaning. The Semantic Compositions on Death and Its Meaning was an album released on June 15th, 2011. It's a very short album, containing only 3 songs that's just under 18 minutes in total, and essentially, each song can be considered a breakcore remix of some of the pieces of legendary composer Max Richter. On the surface, this doesn't really sound like anything appealing, but goreshit adds so much to each piece that not only does he create entirely different songs with them, but upon closer inspection, I noticed he also manages to create somewhat of a story. The story mainly describes the impact death can have on the individual and the people around them, starting off with the individual, who we'll call Protag for convenience, contemplating and fearing death, actually dying, and then the people around Protag realizing they're gone, and the impact this subsequently has. The emotions of all of this is conveyed through the structure and intensity of each song, alongside the cleverly chosen Max Richter samples. The album itself gained a lot of traction on rhythm games like Step Mania and Osu. In fact, on Os, a really good map set was created for each song by the well-respected mapper, Grumd, and is what I'll be using for each song, since it's a perfect visualization of the album as a whole. Be sure to play through it if you have time. In my opinion, the map sets he created for these are timeless. Oh, and before I start analysing, yes, I'm 100% aware that this is probably looking too deep into it, and it's likely goreshit didn't make these with that in mind. It's purely for the fun of it, and to give you guys a different perspective on the amazing creation that is this album. With that being said, let's have a closer look at the music, starting with the first song of the trilogy, The Nature of Dying. The Nature of Dying uses a sample from Max Richter's legendary piece, On the Nature of Daylight, which is a sorrowful violin piece composed as part of his second album, The Blue Notebooks, in 2004. In fact, all the songs in Semantic Compositions use a sample from a song in this album. This sample is used in its raw form for the intro. Which, although is very calm compared to the rest of the song, instantly sets the mood for what will be felt once you progress through it. After about 30 seconds, the drums then come in, presenting us with a complex pattern right off the bat. Pretty much the entire song is loosely based around that drum pattern, and as you may have noticed, the sample has also been sped up in the background to match with the tempo for it. After another 20 seconds, the song starts to build up, using a very low volume breakcore loop in the background to boost anticipation. And then, much lower and more powerful sounding bass kicks are used to complement what's already been established, and the build-up of the intensity of the song shows the progression of Protag's emotions as they contemplate death more and more. As the song calms down again after a while, using cuts of the sample to create a calm yet threatening section. What was originally just a curiosity of the concept for Protag slowly progresses into pure and utter fear. In this section, the loudness of the bass kicks and the ear-piercing static sound accompanying it almost completely drowns out whatever breakcore was happening beforehand, similar to how an intense fear for something would completely drown out any irrational thoughts you may have had. But you can still hear the snares pretty well. In fact, they're just as loud as the kicks. The section then adds another layer of this breakcore loop, that acts like a ride pattern. This is the height of the song, and for the rest of the track, there's fluctuation between this section and the calm drum section from the beginning to really illustrate the internal conflict Protag has gone through. After 5 minutes total, the song dies down with an edited version of the sample. And it ends abruptly. The song is really satisfying to listen to. Breakcore and violin is always a welcome combo, and even though it gets a little too intense for my tastes, I really like what goreshit did with the sound design. After this, the album moves on to the next song, O'er the Flood. O'er the Flood is largely considered the best song of the album, which I'm 100% inclined to agree with. It uses a sample from the piano piece, Horizon Variations, as the main lead, but goreshit adds a bit of reverb to the piano to make it feel like we're now underwater, and the sample is also completely transformed to create this intro. The drums also come in with a lot of reverb and echo in them, starting the song off with a soft pattern. But wait, some of you may be wondering, well, what's going on? Why are we underwater all of a sudden? What's going on with Protag if this is the case? Well, let me read the title again. O'er the Flood. Flood? It sounds like they got caught up in some kind of disaster, where by the end they end up sinking slowly into a dark and bottomless body of water. I like to imagine the build up you hear in the background to be when the disaster happens, and the exact moment the song drops is also when they plunge into the flood. This part is really conflicting for me. When you pay attention to the insane drum chops going on at the back, it feels really intense. But when you don't do that, and you kinda just let everything mesh together and let yourself sink into the music, there's something strangely common about it. Soothing even. Protag also feels the same way. They're not fighting against the water, or struggling or anything like that. They just let the calmness of the water take them as they sink further and further down into the depths of the flood. That is, until we reach this section. As the overpowering kicks make their entrance, this is where the struggle begins for Protag, and they actually begin to drown. Their life begins to flash before their eyes, as they cling onto false hope, but slowly they realize, this is it. It's the end of the road for Protag. They reach out for the surface in a vain attempt to swim back up, knowing full well there's no chance of it happening. They take their final breaths one by one, until it's over. The song climaxes as the body of Protag sinks slowly to the bottom of the sea, and the outro uses a highly reverbed and distorted sample from Horizon Variances to create a calming ambience as Protag rests peacefully under the flood. It's worth noting that in Protag's point of view, this probably happens really quickly. Realistically, this probably happens in about 30 seconds rather than the full 6 minutes of the track, since there's a rumor that time slows down in near-death experiences, and I like to think of this as one of those times when it slowed down significantly. O'er the Flood is by far my favourite song from this album. It's one of the few songs that truly helps me to calm down when I feel anxious or angry, and it might even be one of my favourite songs of all time. Just wish it were on Spotify. Anyways, continuing with the story, word starts to reach O'er the Flood and to the surface about Protag's passing, and the impact of this is described in the final piece of this album. Looming shadow of a tree long gone. Finally, we have the looming shadow of a tree long gone. This track uses a highly edited version of The Trees by Max Richter as the main lead, and this song is actually pretty infamous for its intro. It starts off with a very slowed version of the sample, before abruptly introducing an aggressive and fast drum break. If we were to look at this in the lenses of the people that Protag knew or were close to, this abrupt change is exactly what these people felt when they found out the news about Protag. It's something that's very sudden and that you don't expect. Hell, it's something you don't even believe at first. But realization slowly begins to set in, and the turbulent emotions associated with that takes the form of this song. This song's a bit different from the other two. Instead of there being some sort of development or progression in the intensity of the song, this time the song's rhythm and general pace stays pretty consistent, except perhaps at this part. Why is it that this song specifically stays so much more consistent? My theory on it is that the consistency is similar to how you never forget about someone that has passed. Sure, they may pass from your mind periodically, but the thought of them will always linger at the back of your head, leaving behind the shadow of a person that's long gone. The fast drum breaks that uses a bunch of hi-hats and the distorted bass kicks all play a part in delivering the brutally fast climax of the album. And after about 4.5 minutes, the drums stop playing, again rather suddenly, and the song ends with the same sample that was used throughout the drum section. And that marks the end of the trilogy. The story and emotions presented by the album as a whole is not meant to be some sort of motivating message or a lesson to be learnt. Rather, it's supposed to be an outlet for those who've experienced some sort of loss in their life. And everything from the titles, to the song structures, to the music itself is why I think this is the greatest breakcore album ever released, in my opinion. If you have something else you think is better, then be sure to let me know in the comments and I'll try and tell you what I think. Also, if you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe for more content. If you didn't, leave a dislike and let me know what you'd like to see changed. Thanks for watching and I'll catch you in a bit.